Hello, I'm Brent Fox. Welcome to I Hate Rock Music. And this video is going to be about a band that I've loved for over 50 years, 55 years or so. That's the band Hard Meat. And once again, their two albums I got in cutouts, probably about 1972. And I paid about $1.50 a piece for them or whatever. And of course, I looked at the covers and they're kind of cryptic and kind of dark looking. And there was just three guys in the band, guitar, bass, and drums. So I thought I was going to be in for something heavy. And so I got the records home and was pleasantly surprised. They're on Warner Brothers, their major label, so I knew it was going to be quality. But I was expecting something a little heavier. But that said, they are pretty dramatic in their own way, and they're not quite a heavy band. And I'm kind of surprised that a lot of reviewers out there and reviews I've seen of the band and the records describe them as being heavy or psychedelic and that sort of thing, and they're not at all. So anyway, let me get into the band a little bit. The band was two brothers, Michael and Steve Dolan, on guitar and vocals and bass and vocals, and then Mick Carless on drums. And they're out of Birmingham, England, and got together in 1969 and lasted until 1971. And they made a really interesting debut. They were signed to Island Records in 1969 and released a Beatles cover of all things, the song Rain. And they do a pretty decent job of it, but what a strange choice for their debut single, seems to me in a lot of ways. But they ended up recording a whole album for Island in 1969, and Island decided not to release it. But they immediately got signed to Warner Brothers, released their first album, Hard Meat, and then in 1970, and then also later in 1970, quickly followed up with an album called Through a Window. And I was surprised to find out that they not only toured all over Europe, but they toured the U.S. And so I'm kind of surprised. I've never seen their name pop up on any flyers or any posters or anything like that. So I'm not sure who they might have opened for. But and now there's a 3 CD set space in between that has all three of their albums, which is great to have on CD. They sound great. But finally, to get the 1969 unreleased LP, the one that Island rejected, is now available. And it's interesting to hear that first LP that got rejected. It's not unlike their first album, a little more low key um, than what they eventually became. But in some ways, it's understandable why Island wasn't that impressed. But it's a solid LP. It's well worth a listen. And there's a lot of material on it that showed up on their first album. But you get into the two albums, and they're really fantastic. Um, One of the strangest things about them is they're mostly acoustic based. And when there's electric work, it's generally pretty clean. So there's nothing heavy or psychedelic about them, but they have a certain darkness to them that's really appealing, and these just lush textures of these electric guitars and their natural tones, and then the acoustic guitars and interesting arrangements. I've also heard them described as prog, and I don't think there's anything prog about them, but they sound totally unique, and they just sound wonderful. Both albums are produced extremely well, and the covers are cool, which is always a nice plus. And Michael Dolan is a really interesting vocalist. He kind of reminds me of some other singers. I can't think of anybody that comes to mind right now, but definitely a good vocalist, and the tunes are really good. I love songs like "Smile as You Go Under" and "Run Shaker." Life is really excellent. That's a Richie Havens tune. And so they did a lot of covers, as it turns out. Well, not a lot of covers, but they covered, of course, the Beatles' Rain as their first single. And they do a really great version of mostly You'll Go Your Way and I'll Go Mine by Bob Dylan. And then they even do Strange Fruit by Billie Holiday. So interesting song choices. And then Run Shaker Life, of course, is Richie Havens. But really unique. And don't listen to these other reviewers that talk about being heavy or being prog or being psychedelic. It's just solid rock with really interesting arrangements. A lot of it's fairly straightforward, economical. A lot of it's fairly stark. There's just enough overdubs to get the music across, but they really create their own evocative universe. And as I said, everything's there. It's a solid rhythm section. Um, Michael Dolen's a really cool guitar player. Doesn't really sound like anybody else. Not a lot of drama. Um, there's enough variance and dynamics to make both albums pretty interesting. I think the first album tends to be a little harder hitting than the second one, but they're definitely a very unique band, and I think the more you listen to them, the better they get. Everything is, as I often say, they check all the boxes. It's all there, and they qualify as a first-tier band for me. In a lot of ways, of course, they didn't succeed. They broke up in 1971 after both albums failed to sell, and don't really know what happened to them after that. We're also fortunate to have a live clip from Beat Club, and I was thrilled to see that pop up on YouTube. I've had these albums since 1972, and of course, back in the age before the internet, I had no idea anything about them, had zero knowledge, and so now at least it's cool to be able to find out more about the band, although there's not that much to learn. And then to see a live clip is just really cool because they've been such a legendary band for me in my life, and to actually see a live clip is really a treat. So, so anyway, as I say, quality material, great rhythm section, cool guitar player, cool vocalist, great songs, great arrangements. It's all there. They have their own unique sound. You're not going to hear anything else like it. And they have a really evocative, beguiling kind of sound. And they they just sound like themselves and no one else. And I can't really think of any other bands to compare them to because having an acoustic based band or a band that uses acoustic and pretty clean tone guitars that has a little punch to them. This is one of the few I can think of. So, Hard Meat, excellent band. If you haven't heard them, as always, the links are below. Check them out. Hope you like it. I'm Brian Fox. Thanks for watching.